welcome. I am Ian.
I'm Molly.
And we will be your MCs for this evening. Thank you so much for showing up tonight.
So, the Moth at Crystal is inspired by NPR's The Moth Radio Hour. If anyone's heard of it, we have a really exciting lineup of students and PAC, which, for those of you who don't know, it's just teachers. And they are all going to be telling us a story from their own lives in accordance with the theme Lost and Found. So they can interpret that however they want.
Yes, and first and foremost, we would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Miss Miller, who's been our project mentor. She's been wonderful, and she's been so much help for just being here with us to create this wonderful event. We definitely would not be able to do this without her, so thank you.
And then I would also like to extend my gratitude to my mom because she helped make the delicious fruit plate over there. And she also brought Ian and I to a Moth show in Berkeley earlier on in this project process. And so we're so grateful for her. And she's on video duty, which is
I love you too, Mom. You also helped bring a lot of the lovely food and beverages we have here, so that's very important. It might be an uproar without that. But okay, a few housekeeping notes before we begin.
So if you haven't already, you can respond to our prompt on the slip of paper over there and put it in the little bucket. This is just a way for some extra audience participation, and we'll be reading out those mini stories between each of our main storytellers.
Yes, and as the aforementioned food and drink, please help yourselves. We have so much. If the feeling strikes, go up and get some, but remember to be respectful of our storytellers.
And we would invite you all to silence your cell phones so that we can stay present and also so as not to distract our wonderful storytellers who are being really brave.
Yes, there is going to be video recording, so we will have a memory of this event. So yay! But here's a breakdown of how the event's going to run. So every storyteller has exactly 5 minutes to tell their story. But after 4 minutes have passed, one of us will give this little signal. Ooh, okay. But after 5 minutes has passed, we will give you another signal. And that's going to be what tells you to sort of gently ease to a close. So that we may get through everyone in a timely manner. Oh no, okay. We're going to take a brief intermission after 5 stories, but then we will reconvene. We'll probably ring the bell again just to let you know. And
And our storytellers are being super brave, getting up here with no notes. And I think this is everybody's first time participating in an event like this, so let's show them a lot of love. Big applause and everything.
Okay, and without further ado, our very first storyteller. Will be Mr. Calabrese.
Okay, so picture this. I am standing in a cow field. It's raining. It's about 25-mile-an-hour wind. I'm on a cliff overlooking the ocean in Northern California, probably 10 miles from the nearest civilization. And I am trying to figure out how to turn around and tell the 12 students and 2 PAC members that are standing behind me that I am lost. And that's the adventure I'm going to recount for you. This is my 5th year at Crystal. During my first year, I've been teaching high school for many years, but my first year in a new school, I'm sort of that unknown person. Not everyone's sure I'm gonna work out. Not everyone really knows me. And this is coming out of COVID, so we're still all in masks and we're a little more formal with each other. We're keeping a little more distance. And I decide for some reason that I'm going to propose a backpacking trip during my first year, ambitious. And there's no other trips running because we're not going on planes, we're not traveling the world. So I propose taking Crystal students on the Lost Coast hike, which is a hike in Northern California. It's a 25-mile beach hike that you do over 3 or 4 days. And it's the only trip running, and lo and behold, a ton of students sign up. Most of them, I don't know, I don't teach. And so we get 12 students, we get 3 teachers, and at the start of spring break, we set off on this hike. Now this is a hike that I've done before, but the key thing about the Lost Coast hike is that there are certain sections of the hike that are tidal. So at high tide, they are impassable. So you either have to wait for the tide to recede, or you have to hike inland and try to get around the tidal zone. Okay, very first day of the hike. I'm the leader. Easy day, 6 miles, mostly along the beach, except for there's this one little section where a cliff juts out into the water that is marked as a tidal zone. And we're gonna be going up to it at high tide. So my plan is to cut inland and get around it. So we're going along, everything is fine, and I come across what I am certain is the inland cut. So tell everybody, okay, here's where we're gonna go up and over that cliff that you can see in front of us, because we don't wanna try to cross it at high tide. So we set off, we're going up this trail, and we're climbing this cliff. And it's Northern California, it's rain, it's wind, and we're getting higher and higher, but the problem is the trail is getting less and less distinct. At first, there's footprints. Then there's hoof prints. Then there's some cow patties, and eventually there's nothing. And I'm just standing in a field with wet, concerned students behind me, trying to figure out what exactly I'm gonna do. Looking down at the cliff. And all of a sudden, right around that cliff, on the beach below me, come a group of hikers coming the other way. And they're looking up at us. And one of them gives a friendly little wave, as if to say, what the hell are you doing? And it dawns on me that not all high tides are equal. And in my abundance of caution, I had decided that at any point that there was a high tide, we were gonna go up and around. Well, this was not a particularly high tide. I had taken us on a trail that had taken us nowhere, when I could have just stayed on the beach like I should have done and gone around this little point. So I turn around to the 12 wet, muddy students behind me and say, we are going all the way back down this mountain, and we are going along the beach like we should have done in the first place. That changed the whole trip from then on. Initially, they were a little grumpy, but as soon as we got down, what they really were was interested in making fun of me for the rest of the trip. Mr. Calabrese, are you sure this is the right way? Mr. Calabrese, how many more cow patties am I gonna walk through? Pretty soon it wasn't Mr. Calabrese anymore. Pretty soon it was Calabrese. And by the end of the trip, it was Sea Breezy. And after that, ever since then, in the class, in the hallways, at lunch, they would take the opportunity to make fun of me and to say hi and to make me feel like we had bonded in a real way. And I'm gonna wrap it up, sorry, but that we had bonded in a real way. And of course, being yappers, they told the whole community. So I got lost that day, and what I found when I got back was I had become a member of the Crystal community.
Okay. Over my long 15 years of life, some of the people who have changed me the most aren't even in my life anymore. Over time, I've come to realize that friendship isn't really about permanence. but rather about what each person leaves within you. Some of our friends are lost, and some are found. Some disappear, and some reappear. Sometimes, they can even be found in the most unexpected places. Sometimes, our friends stay in our lives for a long amount of time. For example, in elementary school, when I met a kid who we'll call John. Now, John and I didn't immediately get along, but after our parents had met and we were forced to hang out with each other, we began to grow and learn together. Over time, John and I became best friends. We still are to this day. And spending time with John has taught me that not all friendships need to be dramatic or insane, but rather you can grow together slowly. But friendships aren't always like this. Some of my best friends have left my life. For example, I met a friend, well, pretty much since I was born, because our parents had known each other for a while. And this friend we'll call Mark. Now, Mark kind of felt like a big brother to me. He was older, and he taught me a lot of things that I knew. And we hung out with each other every day after school. Until one day, during COVID, when Mark told me that he and his family were moving to Australia. This was pretty devastating for me, but now that I look back on it, it isn't too sad, because I realized everything that Mark's taught me. Sometimes, we don't see our friends for a while, but when we do, we have an incredible time. For example, I have a friend named Daniel, who I met in elementary school. Now, Daniel and I were best friends from day one, until we moved away from each other. And when Daniel and I moved away from each other, we'll still occasionally see each other, but it's not like every day how it had been for a while. Now with Daniel, whenever we see each other, we have an incredible time. And he's taught me that friendship isn't defined by how often you see each other, but rather by what they mean to you. Finally, some friends come from places that we wouldn't expect. In elementary school, I knew a kid who we'll call Bennett. Now, Bennett and I didn't really get along for a while. He had different friend groups and different interests, until we got to know each other, because our parents forced us to hang out or whatever. They met at a party or something. So, when Bennett and I got to know each other, we realized we have a lot more in common than we thought. And now Bennett is one of my best friends to this day. What Bennett has taught me is that friends can come from unexpected places. So you have to get to know somebody before you can really judge them. Now, in conclusion, friends can come from various parts of our lives, and they can grow and change along our lives. But what's important about friendship is not how long you're with somebody, but what they teach you in the end. Thank you.
Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. This one says, for my senior project, I directed a musical theater performance. Everything was going all right until around week 4, where everything kind of fell apart. People weren't showing up, the schedule changed, we didn't have costumes. I was prepared for the worst. Really, all it took was being clear and upfront with my cast about my worries. I'm really grateful to my volunteers for putting in so much individual work. They really saved the show.
Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. One time, I got very, underlined 3 times, lost in the woods. And right as I was about to give up and bawl my eyes out, a lady appeared with her dog and gave me a ride to my car. Thank God. I hope you're feeling ready, Adam.
So ready. Okay, so when brainstorming what to talk about at today's MOTH, I had a really hard time doing so. Not because this theme was like super difficult, but because I've just lost so many things in my life. I'm gonna list kind of an abridged version of this list. So one puffer, my dad's dress shoes. I've lost like a couple of sweaters. think multiple crystal sweaters, maybe like a crystal hat. But most importantly, I've lost 2 TI-84 calculators, which, as crystal students know, are not the cheapest thing in the world. But yeah, this has been kind of a sore subject in my house. And what my parents don't know, my parents are right here, is that I also lost a 3rd calculator. And so my story today is about that 3rd calculator. So this was around February, I think. I have a friend who also is a bit of a forgetful person, and she needed a calculator for a quiz, and so I give her the calculator, and she takes the quiz. She told me after that she gave me the calculator back, but for 2 months I couldn't find it, so not entirely sure about that. But anyways, I did not have this calculator for 2 months, and I was kind of like skating by. I was like calculator hopping a little bit. I was just asking a friend for a calculator here, a teacher for a calculator there. And it was not the most fun thing in the world, but it was fine. Like it was not that big of a deal to like make a ruckus about it. And then after around like 2 months, I think it ended up in like April. I'm just like sitting here in the senior lounge, just like looking into the cubbies, just like kind of stretching a little, and I see this calculator, and I'm like, could this be my calculator? And I opened it up, and it was my calculator. And the way I knew it was my calculator was it was just as dirty as I'd left it. Actually a little dirtier, so something must have happened in the time between I lost it. Maybe someone else lost their calculator and took my calculator. I don't know. But to this day, I think it's my calculator, but I'm not entirely sure if it's my calculator or not. And I just kind of imagine that there's someone else who's just like kind of going around the school and is like also calculator hopping and like maybe like took someone else's calculator and just has it with them. And yeah, I guess this has all taught me 2 main lessons. Number 1, be more responsible. I should have learned that lesson after like the first sweater, but and I honestly don't know if I learned that lesson yet. Number 2, it's been like a really interesting lesson in perspective of like just kind of like this whole idea of like someone else having my calculator or me having someone else's calculator, and so yeah, I think I gained a lot from losing this calculator.
First we have, tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. I was contracted with the world's most evil college counseling agency ever since middle school, which not only decided my activities, but the way I would present myself and assert my personality to colleges by editing my essays into unrecognizable slop. This obviously took a toll on me, as aside from lacking agency in maybe the most important event in all of high school and the first 18 years of my life, I was not sure if I would be applying to schools and not some gross inhuman product. On the day my applications were due for my top 2 schools, I changed all of my passwords and submitted my unrevised essays to those institutions. I also ended up leaving a bad review on the counseling company that successfully deterred one customer and brought me into communication with the CEO, whose name is Lilia. Yeah. She is 56 years old, and I made her cry, and she deserved it. She called me cynical to my face and otherwise claimed that I was undeservingly ruining her career. Keep in mind, she was a reporter before this, and also claimed she wasn't representing her company in a meeting meant to address my bad review. I hope she has a terrible day. With that, I give you Ian.
Okay, that's actually going to be very hard to follow, but I will do my best. My feet hurt, my clothes are sticking to my skin, and I am stuck in the middle of Bryant Park, New York, with two guys who suddenly hate each other, and I desperately do not want to be the last one standing. Last year, I did a arts program at NYU, and it was my first time really being in the big city. I had a month to make art, meet friends, and explore my surroundings. The only issue with that was that I was terrified. Not of my roommate, who was filming TikTok thirst traps in our shared space, maybe a little. Not of my friends, who somehow seemed to seamlessly adapt to the crowded, bustling environment around us. But I was terrified of the prospect that I would end up miles away from home, the sun setting behind skyscrapers, and I would have no idea how to get back. The first time I ended up traveling along the city alone was actually by total accident. It begins with my doppelganger, who I met a week into the program, Ren, another Asian trans guy about yay high with purple dyed hair all the way down to his shoulders, and these yellow Crocs he would wear every day. I think we had a connection because we sort of were the only ones who were able to tell what the other one was right off the bat, but it turns out we had things in common too. So we made plans one weekend to go to Chinatown and Kinokuniya, which is a Japanese bookstore. We met up in front of our dorms, and we set off, and foolishly, without asking him any questions, or really, how we're gonna get there, I just went with him. Well, we get to Chinatown, okay. And when we get there, a few blocks away from the main streets, another trans boy appears out of nowhere. He's not Asian, but like close enough, But again, you can tell. When you are one, you can tell. And this is when Ren decides to tell me, Ian, this is Miles. He's a friend visiting from home, and he will be joining us. Okay, I guess he's joining us now. But while Ren and Miles catch up, we're wandering the streets. I'm enjoying these red streamers blowing in the wind. They're catching up, and I'm just closing my eyes and listening to all the conversations in Mandarin happening around us. And we duck into stores that are lined with colorful yet scantily clad figurines. We spend way too much money on fried noodles and dumplings. But by the end of it all, we duck into this supermarket, a rare air-conditioned supermarket, to buy a cool drink. And while I'm doing that, Ren and Miles are suddenly very distant and very silent. But I'm pretty sure it's nothing. We leave Chinatown. We go to the subway. I'm sitting in this hot, compact car that is probably the closest thing you can get to Satan's armpit on this earth. I'm sticking to the seat, but it's okay. I'm sure it's fine. They're sitting in different cars now. Oh, maybe they're just tired. Whatever. We leave the subway alive when we get to the bookstore, and there's no one who will walk with me to ogle at the merchandise or joke about the popular manga on display or point out the cute keychains. It's just me. And I'm waiting outside after I'm done with the cashier, and this is when Ren decides to break it to me. Miles and I have a falling out. You're fine if we split up, right? Yes, I hear myself say, but I feel like I'm going to fall over, and there's cars honking, and somehow we've walked our way to the park across the street, and there's people chatting, and I am now the hapless child of this platonic divorce, because Miles is going in one direction, and Red is going in the other direction, and the first thing I do is sit my butt down on a park bench and wait for myself to freak out. But instead of that, I watch the pigeons bounce across the grass. I watch squirrels scurry along the sidewalk. I watch old friends catch up on the bench beside me. An awkward first date pass by, a businessman eating a sandwich in the shade, kids playing around with balls and people working out beneath the trees and chess games happening. And I realize I'm already 3,000 miles away from my home, my parents. I am scurrying across busy intersections every night, carrying like 3 canvases. And half the time, I don't know where I'm going, but I land on my feet. So I realize, what is there to fear? Instead, I get up, I haven't died yet, I take my phone out of my pocket, and I chart my way back home. So I guess when you're the last one standing, you just have to start walking. Thank you. Tell me about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. And in 3 bold letters, we have HRT. Thank you to whoever wrote this, because I agree. It stands for hormone reassignment therapy. Replacement therapy? Yes, okay. And it could be for a variety of reasons, but honestly all good, so yeah. Props to whoever wrote that. Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. I thought I wasn't going to make it to 18, but I'm turning 18 in 23 days. The passage of time is a great equalizer for not only forcing you to confront your inaction, but making you realize that inaction is an action of preservation in itself. So I'm glad my way out has been passive and beautiful. Me too.
This is a story about a license plate, a stupid boy, and that beautiful sisterhood that comes only from being fed up together with someone else in a foreign country. So it was a beautiful overcast afternoon in Guadalupe, Panama, and Haley and I were pissed off at this kid Forrest. Just to give some context, this is like a scrawny little ginger sophomore in high school, and I described him in my journal as a peak male manipulator. And so he was so disrespectful, always roughhousing, on our last nerve. Now, we were about 1 week into our 3-week trip in Panama, where we were doing Spanish, cultural and language immersion, and community service. But unfortunately, my cohort, it was 12 kids, 4 girls, 8 guys. And I can confidently say that not a single one of the 8 guys was normal. And that is, that's statistically kind of impressive. Forrest, however, was the low point. Now, we had spent the morning picking up trash by the side of the road, and Forrest found this license plate, this Panama license plate that he was really excited about. So he washed it off in the bathroom sink and left it out to dry outside the community room. And he was so excited about his license plate. Now, as I said, Haley and I were pissed off. Haley was my roommate. And so, as we were leaving for the day, Forrest and his roommate had already gone. Haley just kind of gently picked up the license plate and we took it with us. And we thought, this license plate might get lost, and then in 1 to 2 business days, it would be found again, and it would return itself. And we would kind of play into it, and if Forrest asked where it was, we'd be like, oh, I don't know. And then 1 to 2 business days later, we would say, look, Forrest, it was here all along. So, a harmless prank. We had, a perfect plan. However, I kind of knew as soon as we left that community building that we set off a ticking time bomb. And I was correct, and that bomb detonated the following morning, first thing. We're in the community room. Forrest walks in. As I mentioned, he was a ginger, and he had this spiky haircut because it was a grown-out buzz. And I thought he was gonna actually burst into flames. He was freaking out. He was like, has anyone seen my license plate? And Haley and I were like, oh no, oh my gosh. And the other 2 girls were in on it, of course. Even though the 4 of us, we weren't particularly similar and we weren't really that close at this point in the trip, we all, we had each other's backs and we're like, oh my gosh, Forrest, I'm so sorry, we'll all look for it. And so we did all look for it. We went out to a flea market later that day, and unfortunately, word did get out to Forrest, and he was not too happy. And so that was a little awkward, and then, our group leaders kind of pretended to be mad at us for doing it, but really I think they were kind of proud of us for putting him in his place. And then we did return the license plate, and he took it home, and I don't know, he's probably still has it. And I wish I could say this is a story about, don't steal things and let people, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but I actually really enjoyed watching that disrespectful little ginger boy kind of lose his marbles over, a little hunk of metal. But what I did find in this process was some, beautiful solidarity with the other girls on my trip. Like I said, we weren't particularly close, and we didn't all have a lot in common, but we did have in common our annoyance with Forrest, and that, I think, is a really beautiful thing. And to this day, I'm really grateful for, Haley being so courageous, because I don't think I would have been. And yes, that is my story. And so I hope Forrest is doing okay with his license plate, and I am really proud of all the work that the 4 of us did. Okay, as everybody's getting settled, we have a special story to start off Act 2, which is that our wonderful head of school, Miss Sortino, couldn't be here, but she sent in a story, a short one. So we're going to read that first, and then we'll invite up our next storyteller. Okay. A charred bathrobe, flip-flops, 1 pair of underwear, a wallet, a rented school video camera, and a single photograph of my late father.
When I was a 19-year-old sophomore in college, a faulty hair blow dryer handle sparked a massive fire in my 5th floor dorm room. Within minutes, the room was engulfed. I evacuated into the hallway, yelling at my classmates that this wasn't a drill.
By the time the fire department arrived, everything I owned was declared a total loss. Spending my spring break sifting through melted, ash-covered belongings was a deeply humbling and numbing experience. I had to go to the mall just to buy clothes, not because I wanted to be fashionable, but literally because I had nothing else to my name.
This moment in my life captures the essence of lost and found. Losing almost everything material, but finding a profound sense of resilience, perspective, and what truly matters. Looking back, that devastating loss became a forced, fresh start for me. It stripped away the importance of material things and taught me exactly what matters in this world: people and experiences. By losing everything, I found myself and my purpose.
So my story I'd like to tell you all today revolves around my time going to summer camp all the way on the East Coast of North Carolina. So I first started going when I was 7 years old. And as the folks here who may know me know, there's seldom a moment when I do not have a story to share about this place. The camp is called Camp Siegel. It is on the Neuse River in Arapahoe, North Carolina. It's a long way from home. I remember my mom telling me stories time and time again about parents giving her dirty looks in the 2nd grade drop-off line for sending her 2 twin kids off to camp all alone, with no contact except for handwritten letters in the summer. That only got worse when it went for a month. The culture out there is a little different. It is not like here. It's not like anyone in South Virginia talks with a smooth as molasses Southern accent, but it is a little different. There's different ways people dress, there are different ways people act, and there are different ways people fit into cultural roles. And being a little 9 or 10-year-old going to camp for one of the first years of my life, I was scared. I was acutely aware of the differences and the very stark contrast to my home state. This story I will tell happened about 9 or 10 or so. It was my first year going for a month. And I wasn't particularly excited about going out and doing all kinds of activities. One key point about this camp is that it is very open and to do whatever you want. So there's a number of activities that focus on boating and sailing and things, but there's also things like archery, paddle sports, and tennis. But the campers, importantly, have free range to go do whatever they want, for better or worse. And so I wasn't too keen on doing anything, actually. What I wanted to do was sit in the sand at the beach and watch a little ant walk along the sand and build a little castle and get knocked down by some other kid, and then build another one, and then knock out someone else's, and just kind of sit there all day. And unfortunately, I wasn't alone in this. There are a lot of kids out there sitting there in sand, not wanting to do anything. They're scared. They don't want to go out and take risks, or really try very hard. I'm forever grateful for this day. because in that moment, there happened to be a counselor that worked on the sailing staff, about a couple hundred feet away at the sailing building. And our little group of kiddos not doing much, caught his eye. So he trudged on over in his baseball cap and sunglasses and life jacket and decided to ask us, hey, would any of y'all like to go out sailing with me? And I wasn't too keen on it, as I've told you so far. However, he insisted. So despite me not wearing any sort of bathing suit whatsoever, he told me, your shorts will dry. Come on. So he stuck a life jacket on me. I would walk out. And I was scared of the jellyfish in the water. I was scared of the boat. I was scared of falling off. I was scared of the cold water once I was on the boat. And I was terrified that we were going to tip over. But in that day, I had a person there who got to teach me all about sailing. And I had a lot to learn from there, but I got great experience, and it really kicked off my actual experience with camp. Not sitting in the sand watching the ants, but actually experiencing things and taking risks. And so through that, I ended up finding a passion for going out and trying things, but also that moment really deeply ingrained in me the importance of helping the other guys and the younger guys. So much so that the past summer I had the wonderful opportunity to come back as a camper, but I got to live for a month in a cabin of 9 and 10-year-old kids and teach them and work with them and live with them, wake up with them at 7:30 every morning and make sure they all showered, brushed their teeth, and didn't drop their towel in the middle of the cabin. So it was a lot of fun. But this summer I am even more privileged to return as a fully employed counselor for 10 weeks. Dealing with kids from age ranges from 5 all the way up to 15. And it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm very excited for it. And the biggest thing I want to do is inspire these kids to find the same inspiration to teach others that I did.
Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. After a beautiful day on the coast, we stopped for burritos at a taqueria we had never been to before. In our post-beach exhaustion, we realized we forgot a favorite red sweatshirt with yellow butterflies at the restaurant. 3 years later, we returned to the same taqueria and wistfully remembered the forgotten butterfly sweatshirt. Why not check to see if there is a lost and found, we thought. Sure enough, the server behind the counter magically produced the beloved sweatshirt. Reunited, and it felt so good.
Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. One time, I found myself staring at a project due the next morning. It was 10:30 p.m. Anyway, I locked in and will never learn to not procrastinate. Smiley face.
The musical from 2025. I had not learned my lines, and neither had my castmates. Wednesday preview, one person forgot to enter on time. My goat, Riley, and I improv'd our way through the scene, hitting all the important lines and delivering an almost flawless performance.
My story is rather literal and short. Actually, not short, but small in some respects. I lost my 3-year-old child. That is to say, I lost her for a brief period of time, but I also don't know how long she was missing for because I lost track of time when I lost my child. I found her in a vast, rolling, immense expanse of green because she had wandered off when we went for a hike in the foothills just outside of Denver. I also found from this experience that I now really understand what it is to feel panic, and I mean unadulterated terror and like the gaping maw of horror awash in helplessness. What happened was we had gone on a hike, and I got distracted because my dog had gone off of the path, and then my 6-month-old, who I was carrying in a baby Bjorn, I don't remember, he started to cry or dropped the sun hat or something or other. The one thing I am certain of is that when I kind of gathered myself from that moment and I looked up, she was gone. I also found that the experience reduced itself to very specific sensory details. I shouted for her, I called, I lost my breath, I started to basically kind of dry heave. And then I figured that I would head up the hill in order to both get my dog back on the leash and try and get like to a higher purchase so that I could then look out over the trails and find her. The minute I walked off of the trail, I also then like kicked into all kinds of thorns. Anyway, somehow I managed to get the dog and my son into the car. We drove to the ranger's office. I reported that my child was lost, and then I left, even though they told me to stay because I had to go look for her. And I drove the car back to where we had originally parked. I got out of the car, and then I saw her, and she was really far away, and I could just see her little red face, and what I will always remember in that moment is just how small she looked and how vast the space was and how tiny we all are in the cosmos.
Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. I hated school soccer because the coach was horrible and mean. And I was planning to quit after sophomore year, but then he got fired because so many people complained, and so I was able to continue soccer with much better coaches. Yay! XOXOXOXO.
In the end of junior year, I was feeling overwhelmed with stress and pressure, but I had the opportunity to go to Kairos and truly reflect and learn more about myself. I learned values that have carried me through senior year.
Thanks, Molly. All right, hello everyone. This is a story about a chicken, a live one. It was the fall of 1994, and I was on study abroad in Morocco. I was living in the city of Rabat, and we would go to Arabic classes during the week, but on the weekends, my friend Nikki and I would hop on public buses and just explore other parts of the country. We really wanted to go to this city called Essaouira in the south, which is where Cat Stevens lived. Anyway, it's kind of like the Berkeley of Morocco. Hippie town, musicians, artists, we were all over it. But it was pretty far away, it's like an 8-hour bus ride. So we decided to take the overnight bus to save some money, didn't have to pay for a hotel, didn't want to waste daylight hours. And so this was before, TripAdvisor, email, online reservations. So we had a paper bus schedule and, a few tips from friends. So we get to the bus station and, the Moroccan buses are kind of stuck in the 70s, or at least they were in the 90s. And they didn't have those those luggage compartments, under the seats. So instead, and we'd been on enough buses at this point to know the deal, there were a couple of guys and they'd show up with a big ladder. And they'd prop the ladder up against the bus and they'd scurry up to the top. Then one guy would be at the top with some rope and you would hand your baggage to the dude at the bottom of the ladder and he would toss it up to his friend on the top and then the friend would rope down your backpack or suitcase or whatever. So the way down, uneventful, great, an awesome weekend, took a bunch of pictures. It was the way back that things got a bit surprising. So we're, standing in line to hand our backpacks to the dude at the bottom of the ladder, and we see this woman walk up, and she's in a beautiful traditional Moroccan outfit, a bright purple jalaba, and a colorful headscarf, and she's holding a chicken, just a chicken. And she hands the chicken to the dude at the bottom of the ladder, and we thought, how's this gonna go? And the chicken had its legs kind of tied together with some twine, and the dude at the bottom of the ladder was completely unfluffed. Took the chicken, tossed it to his buddy at the top, and they started strapping the chicken down with some rope. And we're like, really? That's what you're gonna do to the chicken? That does not seem like a good idea. So meanwhile, I should also mention, it was a dark and stormy night. I mean, really stormy and really dark and really cold. And we thought, how is the chicken going to survive an 8-hour bus ride in these conditions along the ocean? So the way public buses went in Morocco at that time, you would stop every couple of hours at like a rest stop, or there'd be a gas station, and a guy selling some hot soup and a Turkish toilet. And so Nikki and I couldn't sleep. And so every time there was a rest stop, we'd get off the bus and check on the chicken. So we'd kind of get off the bus and we'd look up and we would call out to the chicken, "Mama!" and wait for a response. We didn't hear a response. We're like, shoot. I wonder how the chicken is. How's the chicken gonna survive? So finally we make our way back to Rabat. And at this point we're pretty delirious, we haven't slept, and we're really wondering if this chicken made it. And so we're waiting for the baggage dudes to do their thing and toss the stuff down. And we decide that we're gonna start cheering for the chicken. So the word for chicken in Arabic is dijaj. So Nikki and I start chanting, dijaj, dijaj, dijaj. And as if in perfect call and response, the chicken goes, "Bawak!" and waves, it flaps, its wings, and we're like, dijaj, dijaj. And so I decided that I should take a picture of this moment because we're so excited. The chicken survived this terrible journey. For him, we were on the bus, we were fine. And so I bust out my camera, and Nikki goes over and poses as the chicken is being brought down the ladder with pea stingers. Except I never saw that picture. So because of what happened next. So I take the picture, the owner of the chicken doesn't mind, but the dude at the bottom of the ladder, the baggage handler, he's really mad. So he comes up to us and starts yelling at us. He's speaking, we've been studying Arabic, but we cannot understand what he is saying. And so we try to explain to him, oh no, photo of dijaj, not people, dijaj, dijaj. And he doesn't understand. So then a police officer arrives and escorts us to the local police station. At this point, we are allowed one phone call, and so we pick up the old black landline with a corded phone and we call our program director, Abdul Hay, and say, could you come down here and translate for us? We're in a bit of a pickle. It's about a chicken. We'll tell you when you get here. And so he arrives, and we explain to him what's happened, and he says, you really have to ask permission before you take a picture because there's a lot of fear about, Western journalists taking pictures of Arabs and painting them as crazy. And so in the end, I will wrap up. The police officer made an agreement with our program director to take the film out of our camera. He opened up my camera, took out the roll of film, all of our pictures from the weekend were destroyed. And so the moral of the story is, if you let the chicken ride the bus, don't take a picture.
Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. I got lost in a laser tag maze after a game, screamed for help in the dark, and was found and led out. Refused to do laser tag for many years.
Tell us about a time when you thought all was lost, but a way out presented itself just in time. Camp Seagull. I wonder who this is. I hated sailing. The first day I was
Forced.
Oh, my apologies. I was forced on a boat and ripped the sail. I got stung by so many jellyfish and almost, bolded and underlined, burst into tears in the most masculine North Carolina camp with 800 boys imaginable. But I needed to sail to rank up in powerboat driving, so I signed up for a racing class one morning. This 15-year-old guy was so amazingly gentle with my fear. He didn't shame me, but got me in the right direction, said, quote, face the tiller, unquote, control the boat, and I found the confidence and joy of sailing. Now it is one of my favorite activities ever.
A few years ago, in 2022, I thought I had finally lost it all. I thought I was never going to see another stupid school day again. I thought I had completely lost my way. But then I heard my phone ring. My best friend wants to call. I answer and have the best hour or so talking and laughing. If I didn't answer, and my friend hadn't called, if I had turned off my phone, I wouldn't have lived to see how wonderful life would eventually treat me. I wouldn't have had all these friendships. I wouldn't have found the true joy of living. I love my life, and I'm so grateful for my friends. Thank you, I love you all.
Okay, this is the story of how my mother found her cockroach. So, my mother is an artist, and when I was little, she painted big abstract canvases. And then when we moved to Ithaca, New York, she got a job as a scientific illustrator. And so that meant she was working in an entomology lab at Cornell, and she was drawing beetles under the microscope. And the scientists in this lab were collecting beetles and describing new species. So she had to be very detailed and render these beetles three-dimensionally with carbon dust, and draw like the characters that defined the species. So maybe how many hairs are on each segment of this beetle. So it was a very different kind of art, very detailed. And she wanted to know something about beetles she was drawing, about the insects. So she took an introductory entomology course at Cornell. And for this course, she had to make a collection. So you can imagine like a wooden box with a glass top that has all these insects in it that are in different categories, like certain families or ecological niches. She took this course one fall, and this was not a thing to do if you were a procrastinator, because it got colder as the fall went on, and there were fewer and fewer insects available. So you were out of luck if you put off making your collection. My mother is an inveterate procrastinator. However, she was on her mettle. She needed to prove her worth here, because she was a 40-year-old woman going back to work after raising her children, taking a class with a bunch of Cornell undergrads. And so she really needed to prove she could do this. So she actually did start her collection not too late. And she had most of her insects collected by the time November rolled around. But there were still a few things she didn't have. And she had taken to carrying a little glass jar in her purse. And the jar had some cotton balls steeped in alcohol at the bottom. And so if we were out and about, if she was running errands or she was taking my sister and me to like after school activities, if she happened to come across an insect that fit one of these categories, she could pop it in the jar and it would die a relatively, less painful death with the fumes of the alcohol. Then she could take it home and she could pin it. And I still remember her in the dining room. She really didn't like this part, but she had to stick a pin through the insect, and I remember her wincing kind of when I went through the exoskeleton, and put it in the collection. But I was rather impressed with my mother for doing this. So November rolls around. She still has just a few insects to find, and I'm in 7th grade. And the latest James Bond movie has just come out. It's called The Living Daylights. It was the late 80s. And I really wanted to see this movie, and I persuaded my mom to take me to a matinee one weekend. It was the opening weekend of this movie, so she took me downtown to the Old State Theater, which had been built in the 19th century. It was an old stone building. And I should say one more backstory here, is that one of the things my mom was still missing was the thing that fit in the niche of household pest. Because we lived in a fairly new ranch-style house, and you would think it would be an advantage that we didn't have any insect infestations. You generally considered a good thing. But it was not a good thing for Mom at this point, because all the Cornell undergrads lived in these stone dorms. And in the basements, they had plenty of access to cockroaches. And that was one thing my mom was still missing. Okay, so we're lined up on the sidewalk outside the Old State Theater, I am getting increasingly embarrassed because there are other 7th graders in this line that I know from DeWitt Middle School, and they are not there with their moms. They're there with their friends, they're there with their boyfriends. No one is there with their parents. So I am kind of like just wanting the line to be over. I want to be in the movie, I want to be in the world of international spies. I do not want to be in this line. We get up to the ticket window. The guy hands Mom out the tickets and the change, and out crawls a cockroach. And Mom says, "Oh, there's my cockroach." I've never heard so much joy and delight in her voice. And this cockroach, it goes up the wall in kind of a zigzag way. Mom grabs a Kleenex from her purse, and she chases the cockroach up the wall. She grabs it, and she sticks it in her purse where that little killing jar, is waiting for it, right? And everyone in the line is staring at me, right? And the guy in the ticket window is looking at me like, he really thinks I'm going to explain this. And I'm just like, no relation of mine. Just got my ticket, I have no relation. So we walk into the ticket theater, and I'm just kind of like looking down. And Mom looks over at me, and she's like, "Emily, did I embarrass you?" I'm looking at my feet. I still remember what the rug looked like, the knobbly blue rug of the Old State Theater. And I just didn't say anything in response because, I knew that I had lost the last shred of credibility I would ever have with my 7th grade classmates. Thank you.